Today we're going to level up your open field gameplay by identifying the commanders where you only need to max the first two skills to get the overwhelming majority of their punch. So stick around in this video to talk about the best 5-5-1-1 legendaries. That's low sculpture investment to get huge open field value in Rise of Kingdoms. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and historically I have made the most popular series year over year about the best 5-5-1-1 legendary commanders. And if you're new to the Rise of Kingdoms game, then let me just explain very briefly that numbering system refers very simply to the number of skill points you have on a commander. For example, 5-5-1-1 would mean 5 points in the first skill, 5 points in the second skill, 1 in the third, and 1 in the fourth. It's that simple. Now, the reason that a 5-5-1-1 commander can be very powerful is that some of these commanders, like Zhuge give a lot of their punch just from a couple of their skills being maxed. So knowing which commanders are really, really good at a low sculpture investment can help you pick a bunch of commanders to work on and level up your open field gameplay with a ton of new marches all at once. This is really powerful for players that are just entering KVK Season 3, where you now get access to all the endgame commanders. So in this video, we're going to do the following things. We're going to talk about what's changed since the last time I made this list. We're going to talk about what makes for a really, really good 5-5-1-1 commander. We'll then review which commanders I think make the cut, and then we'll put everything in the tier maker, a tier list, to show you which commanders are really, really great and which ones aren't, including every single commander in the game for comprehensiveness. So you know that we literally looked at every single one, and we'll talk about why they are or are not on the list. And if you're getting value from this video so far, or want to see when I do testing with 5-5-1-1 commanders, which I often do, or 5-5-1 commanders, where you max the first 3 skills, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss my next testing video or my next update to when I make a 5-5-1-1 list. Let's get started, first of all, with what's changed since the last time I made this list over a year ago. Well, the first thing we need to talk about is the addition of new commanders to the museum. And if you are not yet in, I believe KVK Season 3 is when you gain access to the museum, I'll explain very briefly that the museum lets you put additional buffs onto your commanders. And not only can you put these additional buffs onto your commanders, but you don't have to have their skills maxed to do this. So you can take a commander like Mehmed, have his first 2 skills maxed only, then drop the museum buff onto him, and now there's even museum buffs with 2 levels of the relic. So you could get museum buffs for Mehmed with an additional 30% health and 10% skill damage. This is insane. So museum buffs definitely change the calculus for which commanders make this list, including the double relic museum buffs, which are nuts. The other thing that obviously has dramatically impacted which commanders on the list or over the last year is the release of new commanders. And I mean, they have really pushed the power level on commanders to a whole new plane. It's crazy. The final thing that dramatically influences which commanders are on the list is that you can now gain access to these commanders so much sooner. The developers made it so you can get access to endgame commanders in KVK Season 3 now, which is way earlier than it's ever been. So the lifespan of some of those early game commanders has shrunk dramatically because now you have one less KVK you would have played with them, and it makes even more sense than ever to hoard up your sculptures and then do a bunch of these 5-5-1-1s, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, the other reason that a 5-5-1-1 is just a really, really compelling way to build out a commander is that the number of sculptures you need goes up as you put more and more skills onto a commander. So to max the first 2 skills of a commander is only a grand total of 200 sculptures. That's 10 for the unlock. Then it's 10-10, 15-15, or 50 to max the first skill. And then it's 30-30, 40-40 to max the second skill. That's another 140 sculptures. 200 sculptures to max the first 2 skills, compared to the 700 it takes to unlock and max a commander entirely. So obviously, at 200 sculptures a pop, you can work on way more commanders if you're only taking them to 5511 instead of all the way to their expertise. And some commanders are obviously way better than others for a 5511 configuration. So what makes for a really good 5511 configuration? Well, first of all, remember that this is an open field only list. So we're not talking about garrison and rally, and in almost all situations where troops are dying, you really want a fully maxed commander, okay? So this is not rally and garrison, it's open field only. And ideally, that open field commander has the following characteristics. First and foremost, I want them to have area of effect damage. Secondly, I want them to have some amount of march speed. March speed is very, very critical in actually battling in the open field. The next thing I want, ideally, is big buffs or debuffs. For example, William has a great rage buff on his 4th skill, or Skippy Prime has a great debuff, okay, on his active skill, which is really, really powerful. 30% health reduction is amazing. That sort of thing is very powerful in a 5511. In addition, in your really powerful 5511 commanders, the last 2 skills have a either negligible effect on the overall punch of the commander, or you get the majority of their effect just from having 1 point in them. So for example, if we pick a commander like Joan of Arc Prime, she gets the majority of her punch even with just a couple points in her last skills. This last skill over here gives you a 50% chance to use your active skill again. That's a lot of punch for just 1 point, okay? The next thing we need to talk about when it comes to a good 5511 commander is that their expertise needs to not be transformative. It's not a coincidence I've got Joan Prime on the screen right now because her awakening skill, her expertise skill, is good, but it's just extra damage. It doesn't dramatically change the way this commander performs. Other commanders, which we'll talk about in this video, dramatically change the way they work by virtue of getting to their expertise, not Joan Prime. So commanders that are good for 5511 generally don't have a transformative expertise where you really need to go and get the expertise skill as soon as you can. Lastly, what makes for a good 5511, they become a great platform for future investment. I don't want to do you the disservice of saying, look at all these 5511 commanders, go invest in them, and then they become irrelevant really quickly or fade out of the meta. So generally speaking, if I recommend a commander to you for 5511, they are like the number 1 or number 2 commander for their troop type. Maybe they'll be the number 3 commander for their troop type if their effect is good enough, but it has to be really, really good for me to make that recommendation. Now, with all of that covered for what makes for a good 5511, let's talk about a few commanders that are really, really good, even at 5511, but don't make the list. And the first commander that is not going to make the top 5 that are really good for 5511 is actually going to be Boudica Prime. Now, Boudica Prime is an incredibly powerful commander, don't get me wrong, and she is good at 5511, but her expertise skill here is transformative. When under control effects, the troop has 80% chance to dispel them. This is transformative. Where is it transformative? Particularly for open field fights where you're constantly getting barraged by debuff effects that are crippling. This includes silences from Guan Yu. It includes a 15% damage reduction from Zhuge Liang. It includes defense reductions from Nevsky or XY. The reason that Boudica's awakening is, or expertise is transformative, is specifically for big open field brawls, not as much in the 1v1 context, but in a big brawl, you are constantly getting hit with debuffs, and being able to shrug them off with, as far as I can tell, no internal cooldown is just really, really powerful. The next commander that doesn't make our top 5, but definitely goes in the honorable mentions, is one that I have used and really enjoyed for a long time. It's Artemisia. And Artemisia is mostly just to be paired with Boudica Prime at this point. That's it. You pair Boudica Prime with Artemisia. Boudica Prime needs her expertise in order to make this pair work. But Artemisia has a silence effect that she applies to herself when she reaches a nearly full rage bar. And Boudica Prime can shrug off the silence effect. You can see why I'm saying Boudica Prime can be very transformative. So this silence, being able to shrug this off, means you get the 50% damage increase for 5 seconds with no downside at all. That's crazy. And the other thing that's crazy is that you get a 25% damage increase with only 1 point. So if you max the first 2 skills on Artemisia, You're getting 1,800 damage factor to 3 targets, 20% defense and health. The third skill was for garrisoning anyways. And the fourth skill, you're getting the half of the effect. That's a 25% damage lift, which is crazy. And the expertise skill is actually not very good. You buff the enemy's skill damage dealt, which is just generally really bad these days, for a small amount of damage over time. So yeah, Artemisia absolutely makes the honorable mentions list, because if you're going to pair with Boudica Prime, that is really good. The downfall of that is that she is pretty much only good with Boudica Prime. And I would say she's probably right now in that configuration, maybe the number 3 best archer, maybe the number 4 best archer. So she is a candidate for replacement, maybe a year from the time of this recording when we get some new archers. From here, a candidate who is a gold key commander but doesn't make the list, and that is going to be Mehmed. And I talked about his museum buff earlier. It's not a coincidence. Mehmed has a moderate area of effect damage. His second skill is going to give you 20% attack and also 20% skill damage. The third skill is going to give you something for hitting cities, doesn't matter, not relevant for field. The fourth skill gives you a tiny amount of troop capacity boost, doesn't matter. But the thing that's really crazy is that on top of all of what he's giving you at 5511, the museum buff giving you, I think it was 30% health and also 10% skill damage, it's a lot, man. Considering how relatively easy he is to get, and to get to this point with a double relic on the museum buff, let me tell you, 5511 Mehmed definitely makes the honorable mentions list. From here, 2 more commanders I want to cover at this sort of honorable mentions list, and then we'll cover the ones that actually used to be in the list but were removed. And the first one we need to talk about is Guan Yu. Let me tell you, Guan Yu has lived way longer than he should have, and that is because of his active skill doing a silence. That's it. That's it. He's a glass cannon damage dealer with a little bit of march speed, and he's got area of effect damage. He doesn't have any debuffs other than the silence, and that silence is so good that people are still using him. And the crazy thing is that his second skill is completely irrelevant for the open field. This makes him actually very tough to get to the right configuration of 5511, because you don't want 5511. You actually want 5155. You want to skip the second skill. So to do that, you want to max the first skill, and you can use skill lock now to go and do that. You max the first skill, unlock the last 3 skills, and hope that your points land in the last 2 as you apply them. It doesn't need to be like 5151, but anywhere those points go, split across those last 2 skills is really good. And not only is this statistically very difficult to accomplish, I'll have a card up in the top where we talk about the best way to go and accomplish this, but also he is getting old, man, and maybe he'll get a museum buff, but at some point he's going to be a candidate for a replacement, and so I worry about, putting sculpture into him. I think he's fine. I still think he's fine, and I think he could be good for a while, but he's in the sort of end of his life, in my opinion, in the next year or so, maybe, depending on whether or not he gets a museum buff and what other infantry land on the board. And speaking of other infantry, let's talk about power creep and power creeping Guan Yu out of the meta, which hasn't happened yet. Okay, hasn't happened yet. But we need to talk about Sargon. And Sargon is a weird one. He's not as popular because his damage effect happens over time, and he's basically buffing himself, and then every turn he does damage. But his debuff is really crazy. He's got a debuff that makes it so that the target takes more skill damage. And the weirdness of Sargon, and I proved this in a video, is that you're better off not even unlocking the last skill. Either you have him at 5510 or 5550, or you take him all the way to expertise. He actually gets worse when you unlock the last skill, which is crazy. So if you wanted, you could do Sargon, and he's on the honorable mention list because at 5510 or 5551, he's actually really, really good, especially if you're bringing many marches to the field. And I would only even talk about this for players that have 5 or more marches for the open field. So he is really good at an unmaxed state, but let's not get confused. He's best for players that have lots of marches that fully take advantage of the skill damage taken debuff. That is the odd effect that he deploys. So from here, we can now talk about commanders where you're like, wait, I thought these were going to be relevant, and they're not. At least they're not on my top list anymore, and they once were. And the first commander we need to talk about is Leonidas. And let me tell you, his kit's actually really good at 5511 for a lot of the reasons I've sort of talked about that makes the commander really, really great. But Leonidas is outpaced. He's not meta anymore, so I can't earnestly recommend working on a commander that's just out of meta. Similarly, Nebu, he probably has another year of life on him before he gets replaced. So, like, for now, he's got wings. And it's because he does area of effect damage. His third skill is only for rallying, so who cares that it's at 1 point. And his fourth skill gives you a moderate effect. It's a little low at just 1 point, okay? But the area of effect damage for 5511's historically been very good. But I'm just worried he's going to fall off meta. And it's either going to be Artemisia or I think Nebu that sort of falls off meta. I don't know which one it's going to be. It might be the Nebu, to be determined. But I'm anxious about this commander as a long-term investment. Although I think he might have a year. I generally want you to be putting sculptures into commanders that have no end of life in sight. And on the topic of end of life in sight for being meta, let's talk about XY. At 5511, he gets the overwhelming majority of his kit, which is crazy. Nice area of effect damage and a defense reduction on all targets you hit, plus a solid second skill. Third skill is only for garrisons, right? So it doesn't matter. It's for hitting a garrison. And the fourth skill gives you some of the effect, even at 1 point, but not much of it. And the reason that he is historically been a great consideration here is that at just that level of sort of skills, 5511, it's a lot of damage and it's a great debuff. And he has been recommended for a long time. But he's also the #1 Cav commander on the chopping block right now. When we get new Cavs, he's the one I'm replacing, which is a bummer. So can I, in good faith, recommend him right now? No. Even though he is really good at 5511, he will fade from meta, in my opinion, soon. So I wouldn't put sculptures into him there. The other commanders we need to talk about are actually before Season of Conquest commanders. And if you're a whale, okay, they don't make the list, but if you were a whale before Season of Conquest, if you took Alexander the Great or Richard the First or Saladin to 5511, those commanders you could use in KVK Season 1 or 2 and get some value. And that's just because you're spinning the wheel anyways, so you take them to 5511 from the wheel. But otherwise, they're just not worth the universals anymore because you get the endgame commanders when you get to KVK Season 3, man. So don't use any universals on any of those commanders for sure. Now, this brings us, by the way, to the top list. And again, if you're enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing to the channel. If we look at the top commanders, this is going to include, in no particular order, first of all, Zhuge Liang. This dude is a beast. These are the best 5511 commanders. He has area of effect damage that does a damage reduction to the enemies. That is cracked. It's insane. And his area of effect damage is in a circle. That's nuts. His third skill is really good for the open field. If you have only archer units, you get some boosts here, which is nice. The fourth skill is really good. It gives you a marquee effect, increasing your damage dealt, and then the marquee effect is removed to deal damage, but you still do 700 damage, even with that only at 1 point, instead of the 1,500 damage factor. But the reason he makes this list, and might even be the #1 commander, is purely because circle AoE hitting, 5 targets and reducing their damage dealt. That's cracked, man. That's insane. He is missing March speed. So let's go to the next commander here. And we already talked about her a little bit, but the next commander we definitely will be including in this list is Joan Prime. And Joan Prime at 5511 is really good. And I used her unmaxed in Kingsland, and I was shocked at how good she is. And her awakening skill, her expertise skill, is just incremental damage. So you get her to like 5511, and you're already in a great spot. More skills are good, but each point is very incremental in nature. The way she performs will not transform. She'll just do slightly more damage. So she's a great candidate for 5511 with incredibly high power level and AoE buffs and AoE damage. Love to freaking see it. From there, we're going to talk about more AoE damage, baby, and we got to include Skippy Prime. He was, I think, the #1 commander on my list in the past, and he's still a beast with no end in sight. Big AoE damage, big debuff. Second skills gives you attack and march speed, which is great. And also, the remaining skills give you nice shielding and damage over time, even at 1 point. Skippy Prime, 5511, is a beast, and he's a great platform for future investment. Finally, the last two we'll include in our top 5. Alexander Nevsky, man. I mean, he's just wicked. He's too strong. At 5511, you get 2,300 damage factor and a defense reduction, which is crazy. You also get attack, march speed, and health. Okay. And then 1 point in these last couple skills. Yeah, it's not doing as much as it would if they were maxed, but his power level is so pushed. It's so insane that, like, yeah, he has to be on this list. He has to be. He's too good. And he's a great investment for the future. And his awakening skill, his expertise, is very good, but it is somewhat incremental in nature, okay? And the final commander that makes it onto the 5511 legendary list might be surprising to you, and it's William. And the reason that William makes this list is that he does two crazy things. First of all, upside to the crazy things he does area of effect damage, even though it's in a rectangle shape. But when his rectangle shape AoE hits multiple targets, you give your team a defense and rage boost. And at only 1 point in the last skill, you give your team a 10% defense boost and 50 rage per second for 3 seconds. And it takes the last 4 skill ups to get only 10% more defense as the buff to the rest of your team. I think the 10% extra defense is really good, but like for 1 point, bro, that's insane. But we're not done, because he also reduces skill damage bonuses from the enemy you're hitting. So additional skill damage boosts do not take effect, and he reduces their march speed when you hit them with the active skill, and that lasts for 3 seconds. So commanders that are boosting skill damage, like Yi-Song, like Zhuge Liang, heck, if you're swarming a garrison, you've got commanders that boost skill damage like Heraclius, okay? All that to say, William, for 5511, is actually crazy good. Crazy good. And I will argue, obviously, he's like the number 3 cavalry commander right now. But because he's the number 3 cavalry commander, not the number 4 cavalry commander, and his effect is so cracked, if you use 2 cavalry marches, I'm sorry, but the William at 5511 is so good. If I were to make another march on my restart account, I might be looking to work William into the mix. It's just that freaking good, okay? So now we can go and jump into Tier Maker and actually rank all of these and cover every single commander in the game. Here we are in the mighty Tier Maker, the most powerful tool in my content creator toolkit. We're going to rank every single one of these commanders. And of course, we'll talk about which commanders are not good for 5511. And there's so many commanders. We're going to go very, very fast through this list, okay, to try to get through this and every single commander very quickly. So Nevsky goes in the top 5. Easy choice. I'll put Ethelfled at not good for 5511, but the reason she goes in this category is because you should just expertise her. Hello. She's actually fine at 5511, but like she's free, so just max her, okay? Alexander the Great. You can do this if you're a whale before Season of Conquest. Just spin the wheel. Don't use any universals. I used to say, gosh, that Amani was good, but she's completely outpaced, not a top commander anymore. Artemisia is in that honorable mention category. Oh, God. Attila and Takeda, I'm just going to put not good for 5511. Similarly, I don't know if the ranged commanders are or are not good for 5511, but I just generally think it's not a great investment for most accounts, so we're just going to put him at not good for 5511. Bert is not a top cav commander, so he's not good. Boudica Prime, honorable mention. Let's freaking go. Sundok is a gathering commander. Stop it. CC is a gold key commander, and he's not meta. Chandragupta, maybe for 5551, maybe, but probably not. Actually, no, I don't think so. He's not good. We're going to put him there. Oh, God. Simply no on Charlemagne. Don't do it. We're also going to put Charles Martel in this list. He's actually fine, but at this point, like, you just got so many other commanders you can use. I suppose, theoretically, if you double relicked him, you could use him, and he actually wouldn't be that bad, but compared to your other priorities, he just doesn't fall on the list. CJ needs to be maxed to get value. Cleopatra's a gathering commander. God, Constantine is actually really good in Canyon at 5511, but like, I just used Mulan on my restart account where I didn't invest any sculptures in Constantine, and I'm doing great. So, he is good, but Don't put any sculptures in Constantine anymore, man. Also, Cyrus. Once very powerful, now his active skill is just too low damage to really hang. Edward of Woodstock is just a bad invest unless you're rallying in a KVK2. El Cid. I mean, look, compared to your other options, you got bigger things, better projects. This is a Garrison, no. Freddy is a just no. Khan is a just no. Gilgamesh doesn't make the cut. Guan Yu is I believe, honorable mention. Barca is an LOL. Do not try to 5511 that. Harold absolutely needs to be maxed. Do not do it. Henry could actually be good, but he's primarily designed for rallying and garrisoning, so he doesn't make the cut, right? Not all of his skills, well, he's not meant for garrisoning, okay. He's meant for rallying, but not all of his skills are relevant in the open field. So we're just put him over here for now. That's not good for 5511. I actually think he'd be okay. Hera's a garrison, so no. I think that the awakening or expertise on Honda's very good, so I'm going to put him in the not good for 5511 category. This is a gathering commander, garrison. Joan Prime is insane. Hello, yes, top 5. Julius Caesar, man. The double relic on Julius Caesar is actually kind of crazy, but I'm just going to put him in the not good for 5511 category because I would use Mehmed before I would use Caesar, and I'm only going to put one commander that is a gold key commander in that honorable mention. Poor Leonidas. He goes in the retired category. By the way, I forgot I had the retired category. They once were good, but now they're not good investments. Okay, Lubu is a joke. No. Okay, ranged commander. That's a no-go. There's Mehmed. Let's freaking go. Honorable mention. Minamoto might actually belong in honorable mention. It might actually belong there. For now, I'm going to put not good at 5511. I mean, the way to think about your Minamoto, if you're going to use him in the open field, I think he actually could be okay at 5511. But, like, if you're going to work on him, you max him really early and then put the museum buff in him, and then you use him for a long time, right? Let's continue forward here. Mulan is a gold key commander. Don't put sculptures into him. Moctezuma is a joke. Do not put any sculptures into Moctezuma. Take my word for it. I maxed him. I improved my Barb Fort Rally by 1 Sev wound. Card will be up in the top if you want to watch that video. Nebu is retired. Pakal is a LOL. Do not do that. Dido is a no-go. That's a garrison. Ragnar's a gold key no-go. Ramses maybe once could have been on the list, but no. If you are a whale before Season of Conquest and you max spin the wheel for Richard, you could use it. Same is true for Saladin. Sargon goes into the honorable mention list. All right. Skippy Prime, freaking beast of a commander, goes in the top list. Oh my God. Suleiman is a no-go. Takeda is a no-go. This commander could actually be interesting. Tariq ibn Ziyad, but we're going to put him in the no good category because he's technically got a skill committed to rallying, and most open fielders are not going to get value from that. Plus, he's potentially for pure open field on the chopping block, so you'll find a better infantry commander soon for that. This is a garrison, so no-go. Thutmose could actually be pretty moderate, but I just don't think so. Tommy is kind of an interesting tech play, but this is like only if you really know what you're doing and you're a whale. Like, do you try to swap in the Tommy for a skill damage boost? Trajan really needs to be maxed, so he's a no-go. We've got, William goes in the top list. Dude is a beast. This is a garrison. Esong is a no-go. Zhuge Liang, bro, take your place up at the head of the table. All the way at the top. Let's freaking go. This is a garrison. And your boy over here is retired. GG. I might have missed 1 or 2 retired commanders, but I think that gives you a pretty good sense of what the best of the best actually looks like. Boom, there it is. And when we talk about which ones are the very best over here, I would probably rearrange the list to look like that. Zhuge Liang, Skippy Prime, Joan Prime are the very best in an unmaxed state. Now, some people are going to be like, bro, are you saying Joan Prime's better than Nevsky? No, I'm not. But I'm saying for being unmaxed, I think she actually is better than an unmaxed Nevsky. I mean, her area of effect damage and buffing is too crazy. It's too crazy. I think we got to say it's better than the Nevsky. And it is crazy that we have 3 cavalry commanders up there, but cavalry are cracked. And the other thing that's really insightful when you actually step back and look at this list is you go, oh, wow. So Chisgule also said that Minamoto could actually be pretty good. Like, if you max him and you double relic, he's pretty good. Now, we're talking about a max commander now instead of 5511. So, like, you know, I suppose for the small amount of dollars, the 5511 Minamoto is pretty moderate. But we're not going to include him on the list for now. But what I'm trying to say is that it is really crazy that you could get 2 Cav marches up and running so easily with Joan Prime unmaxed, Nevsky unmaxed, William unmaxed, and if you were a spender, like, you have a max Minamoto, right? You're in great shape. In terms of the honorable mentions and actually, like, ordering those, I think Boudica Prime has to be at the sort of head of the table here. And then I think we would probably put Guan Yu, then Mehmed, and then Artemisia, and then Sargon. And Sargon is, like, the very last honorable mention, because if you bring lots of marches, he's really good. But typically players that are looking at 5511 don't have tons of marches. They're, like, just getting rolling, right? They're just getting started. So we'll put him at the very end of this list, because if you work on him, okay, and that's an if, he's good, but I think you have other priorities. I mean, I gave you 9 other higher priority things to go and do, okay? Now, if you got value from this video, do me a huge favor, throw a like on here and consider subscribing. I've released this 5511 list regularly for the last couple years, and it's been an extremely popular video series. So again, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next time I release this list. And if you're looking for some entertainment, I mentioned to you earlier that I maxed Moctezuma just to see how good it would be, and it was a disaster. It's like the worst legendary commander investment possibly I've ever done, improving my Barb Fort Rally result by literally 1 Sev wound. Yeah, card will be in the end screen for that in just a second. Enjoy the popcorn. That's a fun one.